WebEx
recording
Assistant
from
is
our
enabled to save audio highlights.
clearly emergency. For managing internal waste is located here in New York City, works only in the Northeast. Excellent references, provide 3 dedicated program managers for us, provided us our 30% MWBE utilization plan, provided a detailed facility-based transition plan. We had lots of conversations with their references, did some site visits, given the kind of the critical importance of this nature service. Action Carding is currently our subcontractor through Scary Cycle. The interest was being able to contract with them directly for us to be able to have a better service and conversation and outcomes with Action Carding in the hauling and disposition. They also have a significant footprint within New York City, and one of the enhancements will be them providing new containers for waste disposition for our facilities and at their own cost. They'll also have a compactor capability built into it to permit us to really, as it says, compact the waste and be able to get more into each container before they need to be hauled. They also have a 30% utilization plan for us. So here is, just as a quick reference here, our MWBE partners in these 2 contracts. So our request of the Finance Committee is approval to enter into contract with ASWH for system waste management for a period of 2 years with a 2-year renewal, exercisable only by the system, effective October from an NPE of $20,117,120 with a 30% utilization plan baked into our agreement. We're also seeking approval to enter into a contract with Action Carding Environmental Services for system waste hauling and disposal. That also is a 2-year contract period with a 2-year renewable, exercisable solely by the system. Also effective 1st of October with an NPE of $14,224,332, also with a 30% MWBE utilization. So, thank you very much. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you need.
Thank you, Paul. I'll start with questions. Matt Ziegler?
None for me.
Thank you. Sally Hernandez-Pinheiro?
The incumbent vendor, Stericycle,
Yes.
might have seen so curious about what they did, whether they expanded the scope of services, whether there were services they couldn't provide, or that a
Sure. You know, as you point out, often our incumbents are the ones that have that inside track, be able to understand our facilities and services, and already have gotten feedback from us on our interests. I think the 2 compelling components really related to their on-site management proposals. That in this request, we ask for more on-site management, deeper engagement with us, and also to be able to assure that the education and training was more consistent, online, and be able to provide reports to us. A third component is that they had a very modest NWBE utilization plan that they delivered. So in our robustness in our conversations, we went back several times with our each of them, including Stericycle, about their proposals, the interest from the evaluation committee. So that's where they fell short. We didn't say there was a dollar limit that you could provide here. We're interested in the service, how you're going to be able to do it, and the provision of that for the important communication and follow up.
One vendor specifically presented to you a transition plan. Was it necessary for the hauling?
For the hauling, it's a much more limited transition plan. They're already there. They know us. That the change will be that they will be swapping out a number of the containers at our facilities. So it will be something that we'll be able to do. They're giving us a calendar of when that will occur, so we can go to the facility liaisons to assure that the docks are clear. We'll be able to haul the other one out, and new ones in and stuff.
How long will it be?
For we're looking at it being 45 to 60 days to be able to do the change. There's a lot of work to be done, given the thousands of containers at each facility that need to be swapped out, the communication with our staff. So we're starting in early August to get approval by the board to be able to start the individual plans with each of the facilities, meeting with the CEOs, their staff, laying out the plan, what days we'll be doing that switch over. So we've got to have a very detailed transition.
But you have the things that
We are. They're continuing to do the day-to-day work.
Thank you, Sally. Fenioski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Paul, I have a couple of questions, and the first one, just following up on Sally's. So, based on my understanding, Approved Storage and Waste Handling, they have not done business with Health and Hospital, so they are new vendors. And you mentioned here that they are located in New York City and works only within the Northeast. But you did not refer to any kind of clients that they have that would be comparable, particularly since in Action Carting Environmental Services, you do mention their work with MTA sanitation as well.
No, thank you. One of the big facilities they work with is Montefiore.
Oh.
So they have 8 campuses, and that's where we had a couple of conversations and a site visit with them to really drill down on the service and make sure that they could manage us.
So I don't know if it will be possible, Colisha, but maybe there's a very good information to add when we present it to the full board, because it shows that even though they are new to us, they are very familiar with systems within the New York City, and particularly health systems. I think that will be very helpful. The second part, I think I just want to commend you, because I was very impressed that both vendors met the 30% and that they have a plan and identify individual sub-consultants with a specific percentage of NWB. I think that was really reassuring how well the evaluation committee took into consideration the criteria, and these vendors were able to meet it, particularly with your comments that you made, which was one question that I was going to ask, but then a little bit Sally preempted, is with Stericycle, that you mentioned that the issue of MWB may have been a factor in the decision. And I noticed, well, you present here in your background that we spent 46 million, a little bit more than 46 million with this vendor. Do you have information about what was the expenditure in MWB during those 6 years for this vendor?
It was probably around 5%.
5%. Okay. So this is a significant improvement what we're going to see in the performance of this. So I think that will be all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara, do you have any questions? Great. Paul, I just had one question. If you could speak a bit about the decision to break apart the two contracts. Stericycle was one single contract before. Are there benefits to breaking them apart? Is it cost related, functionality?
Sure, thank you. You know, I think in the context of our conversation with our evaluation committee, one of the concerns was the regularity with the pickup by action carding, and if there were delays in that, one would have to go through Stericycle to be able to then call the vendor, and there were delays in doing that rather than being able to pick up the phone or have those regularly calls take place. So there was one piece in wanting to be able to better manage, given the amount of disposition materials we have to move out of our facilities with limited storage. You know, the second piece is really getting better metrics on how much there is, because we're moving from a flat fee with Stericycle to a weight-based process with our vendors in this instance. And we believe that there's a lot of opportunity in being able to better manage our waste, being able to track it, and with the compactor, the new compactors that we'll be getting will be permit us to have fewer hauls and be able to get more in them and have a better kind of relationship. Our environmental service directors at each of the facilities are the ones that routinely manage that movement, and it's frustrating to them not to be able to have more authority, if you will, for assuring that we're making those docks clean, that we're moving the waste out on a timely basis. They have relationships, so really we just build on, and I think that make it much more effective.
So both contracts are then weight based.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. And what about the compliance aspect? So I think you mentioned that a SWH sort of has control over compliance and regulatory issues and training, et cetera. Is there a component of that that's important on the hauling side that will be?
There are different containers that relate to where we're moving the regulated waste out. We have different containers, so they're all kind of containerized, associated with what type of waste they are, color coded and marked, and then we manifest. So there's a management component for being able to remove those. So we get today and will continue to get the documents that confirm that they've been appropriately picked up and disposed of based on the type of waste that they have.
Okay, so the two will
Yeah.
sort of be integrated
Oh,
in that
absolutely.
way. Right. Go ahead.
Sure.
I have another question for you, Madam Chair. Paul, looking at the expenditures, maybe you can share with us what other services are being added to this new contract that perhaps was not in the other contract? Because when I calculate the expenditure in the prior contract for 6 years and 3 months, it comes out to around $7.4 million per year. And again, I guess 1 year on others will be higher or lower, but if we look at the new contract, which is only for 4 years, it comes out to 8.5, so it's like $1.1 million more per year. Can you articulate what was the extra services that may account for that differential?
And it's not so much service related as it is doing the calculation based on the current weights that we have. We believe that the weights that we have are not going to be reflective of the weights that we will be experiencing. So this is a not to exceed number, but we believe that given the checks and balances we're building into here, and again, an easy example is with the containers themselves having a compactor put into, so we'll be able to, brush the waste make more room in that container, more bags will go into it, more crushing, so there'll be fewer hauls. So it's really, in the hauling part, it's going to be based on the number of hauls that we actually have there. But we believe that we'll be reducing the number of those hauls that we have based on better, more sophisticated containers. The other piece with the internal management of it, again, it's a weight-based cost that we'll be looking forward. And we believe that, again, our measures will be more precise going forward, and that we'll be able to track them to assure that we're managing and communicating appropriately with both our facilities and with the vendors. So we think that this is, again, that cushion in the context of the most that we would expect with it not coming here.
Just a follow-up. Is that okay? So you expect that right now, if we are calculating around 8.5 per year, you would expect that we will be below that, and hopefully below the 7.4 that we were in the previous one?
I'm not convinced that we're going to go that low.
Okay, okay.
Because there is a balance both in, our service, making sure that we've got our management team in there. Because again, it's a very heavily regulated area. We've got a lot of assurance. We're doing more work than we want to be able to do to make sure it's there. We need a better balance that way. But we do believe that going forward in this model, that we're going to have, better service, better management. We're going to have better weight management. We'll have an easier way of communicating with our facilities based on the data. And so we think that, this is going to be a real enhancement for us and relieve, many of the concerns that we do deal with day to day, across our 21 facilities and all the community-based organizations. There's a lot of moving parts to make sure we do the right thing.
Thank you.
Barbara?
Well, like you may have already stated this, we've had a very different year compared to our last 104 years. So there were some decisions that were specific based on that on our last year. What do you think? Or do you
Sure. Good point, and that's part of what we're building in with emergency preparedness plans, associated with making sure we have backup plans for every waste, as well as with the staffing. Because, there's obviously a lot of movement internally with technicians, and so part of the assurance with our new vendor would be, adequate staffing available to be able to do that. So those are the two components, enhanced backup staffing and enhanced plans for each of our waste plans.
Paul, I just have one follow-up on the conversation with Senioski. So the action contract is, you said, sort of hall-based, right?
Yes.
And so these are estimates for the not to exceed. But I think the first year and the second year have different values, whereas the internal waste management side is the same for the 2-year. The first 2 years and the second 2 years.
Correct. So we were able to negotiate paying them at a flat fee as a cap on the internal. Both of us, the vendor and ourselves, are certain that we won't be getting their dollars. With action carding, it was based on their current work and then a consumer price index increase.
So the second term, the rate, if you will, then is escalated for the second term, but you're sort of assuming the same level of hauling. It's not because you're assuming it's going to increase the haul.
any regulatory fees?
There was some complexity associated with the Department of Environmental Conservation as the oversight for pharmaceutical waste. There are some kind of arcane regulations in New York State that have not been changed to match some of the other regulations. And so we ended up with a series of audits that took place at a few of our facilities where we put in corrective action plans. It didn't cause harm or penalties in terms of fees. There were process changes that they required, and those are pieces that we did conclude. It was something that we would have expected them to do a little bit better of a job in helping us in that process. And together we got through it, and we also did changes. But that was the one item over the last 2 years that we addressed.
And do you, just as a follow-up to that, Paul, do you think that the new vendor is in a position to sort of help us make sure that we are in better compliance and continue to be?
We spent a lot of time talking about, again, the regulations and all the different oversights and kind of drilling down with that in several conversations. But just because of this and our concern with our COO, and our safety directors who, clearly get on the line for these kinds of questions, that was an important part of it. And yes, that's what we're very comfortable with.
Great. Any other questions from the members? No? Thank you, Paul. I think we will call for a vote. Make a motion to approve the resolution. And Matt Seaver,
Yes.
Sally, Benny,
Yes.
Barbara?
Yeah.
And I vote yes. Thank you, Paul. The resolution is adopted. So we have a second action item. It's the DOE and mobile unit testing expansion. I think Chris Healy is.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to come here this morning and to meet with you in person on this topic. So for the resolution, this is authorizing the New York City Health and Hospitals Corporation, the system, to sign 11-month agreements with each of the 12 vendors listed in Annex A attached to this resolution to perform COVID testing both in schools and in the community on an as-needed basis for an amount for all vendors not to exceed $250,480,410. So, as we've discussed in this venue and as everyone knows, New York City was hit incredibly hard by COVID early on in the arrival of COVID in the United States. Part of the city's response to that was an aggressive testing program inside schools and in the communities to bring testing, in effect, anywhere that it would be needed, to bring as much capacity as possible to be able to reach all the different corners of the city, both through community testing and in-school testing. Since the start of this past school year, we've had 4 vendors through the course of the school year be involved in that: BioReference, Fulgent, Somos, and MedRite. Their spend averaged $16 million, with a pretty wide range between $7 and $34 million. And then on community testing, we had a number of vendors: Rapid Reliable Testing, MedRite, and Premier Assist, with an average of about $9 million per month. In May, we went to the CRC, which approved a release of a solicitation for applications to contract for both of those testing modalities that would begin in August 2021. The scope of this work is based on current anticipated need. We're looking for dozens of teams to be able to be out in the field every day. Currently, we have 40 mobile unit testing teams that are out 7 days a week, 10 to 12 hours a day. During the peak of the school year, we had upwards of 200 teams out in a given day, spread throughout the public school system, doing testing of both students and staff inside those schools. So for this, we're looking for each vendor to be able to do, on the school testing side, at least 15 teams out in the schools, and for those on the community side to have the capacity to do at least 8 teams on the community testing side. The fee structure that we're seeking, that we sought and received bids on, is either on a per test cost basis or a per team cost basis. On the per test basis, that's we looked at a $75 target, and then the per team basis is particularly useful when we're going to be asking vendors to go into relatively low volume testing sites to help cover their overhead on locations where the city's identified as a testing priority, but may not be able to cover their overhead with a low testing number at $75 a test. So if you go in and do 10 or 15 or 20 tests, they wouldn't be able to cover their overhead. So we arrange a team fee structure with them to be able to cover that. The next slide here on the RFP criteria, what we're looking for is proven success in providing large-scale testing, ability to begin work quickly and to scale quickly, and for MWBE certification. You see the substantive criteria here, the two largest: cost and relevant experience, as well as ability to scale, data management, community and language expertise in MWBE. The evaluation committee involved a number of different people from different arms of the test and trace program, from labs to finance, the school to individuals managing the school testing program, individuals managing the community testing program. So when we issued this in May, on the next slide here, we've got 29 vendors that applied. We're seeking authorization to contract with 12 of them. This would include 6 incumbents, as well as 6 new partners. All work under this contract is discretionary based, so we can assign more or less or no work to any vendor contracted with at any given time. Of the 6 incumbents here, 2, as we've discussed in the past, met or exceeded MWBE targets. 2 have made significant progress throughout the course of the past 8 months or so, and then 2 have had to really play catch up among the incumbents, and they have made considerable strides on that I'm happy to speak to. What we're looking for here is a not to exceed, as I said at the beginning, of $250.5 million, with that spread about 151 million per month on the school, per year, for the about 151 for the in-school testing side, and about 99 to 100 million dollars of that on the community testing side, and about $9 million a month. You see here the 12 vendors that we are proposing to move forward with, listed along the left side of this. It's okay, next slide is fine. So we're looking for 11 months. That would carry us from August through June. We're looking for a not to exceed, requesting a not to exceed of 250.5 million. We're looking to come to this committee and then bring it to the full board. As you see here, sort of as a function of when we had to submit this document, we didn't have the list of all of the subcontractors. There's 3 listed here that have TBD, BRL, Fulgent, and Daybreak. We've received the names for each of those. We've been working with the procurement supply chain team to make sure that that was in place. So BRL, we've got Olympic Glove and Safety Company, Redstream Technology, A+ Tape and Packaging, as well as East West Systems. Fulgent, they've got Cure Staffing, SendMed Enterprises, Globe Scientific, and the Olympic Glove and Safety Company as well. And then on Daybreak, the third one there that you see TBD, the vendors they're going to be partnering with and have already contracted with here are Deluxe Delivery and Joanne Franklin Staffing Firm. So each of them do have subcontractors now identified. It was just a function of time why those names weren't available when we submitted the documents here. So with that, I'd be happy to speak to any questions, including MWBE, which I know had been an item that we discussed when I came here last month around the expansion of the not to exceed under the prior contract. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I'll pull each for questions. Matt, I'll start with you.
No questions.
Okay. Sally?
I just want to be clear. Your 5 vendors that can do the school test, and they include BioReference Labs and Fulgent?
BioReference Labs and Fulgent, yes, they both can do in-school testing. And
Okay. Are they at 30% MBE yet?
each of them here, as you'll see on, under their prior work, you mean?
No, under the work that they're going to perform.
Going forward, that's what we see here. Everyone is at 30% or greater on a go-forward basis, including the 6 incumbents, which would include BRL and Fulgent.
Thank you, Sally. Betty?
I have a lot of questions. I don't know if you can go web and then come back to me.
Sure. Okay, Barbara.
Well, yeah. Some people don't know, but I am a school teacher as well.
Oh, I didn't.
worked with the state education department around health issues. How many of these vendors, well, your top ones, have worked in the school system previously?
So we've got the four of the six incumbents have already been working in the school system with us. And then all of the vendors proposing to do in-school testing going forward under the new contract, all of them have some levels of experience. Some are in larger school districts, some are in smaller districts, some are in New York State, some are elsewhere, but all of them have at least some level of in-school testing experience. And what we would plan to do for any new vendor going in to do in-school testing is we would sort of give them a tryout period on the community testing side, just to make sure that we understand how they work, that they're reliable, because that's a simpler environment to do testing. There's not as much complexity around consenting. When you're in the school, you might be looking to test a 9-year-old that's not with their parents, right? So the consenting is more complex. The data transfer back in for contact tracing into the DOE situation room is more complex than testing out in the community where you just, all labs would report to the state. So what we'd be looking to do is take any new vendor that hasn't done in-school testing with us and try them out on the community testing side before we put them into the schools.
The experience level is important because for those of us who've been concerned about school health from its inception in the school-based clinics, et cetera, it's been a difficult implementation for other vendors to enter the school. The schools, it's not their priority. And unfortunately, a lot of clinics had to close actually, or kind of defaulted after a while. So I'm concerned about that. And then the parents' behavior with the testing, et cetera. It's going to be a big concern. So staffing and someone who is a negotiator of some sort will be necessary, I'm sure.
Yeah, you're hitting on a lot of the issues that we have been working through and continue to work through on this program, right? You know, these vendors have been in there for months at this point, 4 of the vendors, I should say, have been in there for a number of months, including continuing with school testing now during summer school. So right, we need to work with the DOE, making sure that they understand who's going to be coming to the schools, who those staff are, what they're going to be doing, making sure that all the security requirements are met, all the health screening requirements are met in advance. You mentioned the parents, absolutely. Parents, teachers, unions, there's a lot of stakeholders that are involved in this one. This is a very complex body
They
of
will,
work here,
some
for
of them
sure.
will want to be tested and immunized as well. And so that plan has to be
Yeah, and so,
approached
you know,
at
what
some level.
it had been during the last school year was, in effect, to be in-person schooling, you needed to consent to be part of the testing program. If you didn't want to, you could also do remote learning. But as you know, there won't be a remote learning option this fall. Everyone's going to be coming in person. So that's going to be a big complexity change here in terms of the consenting process that we're really going to need to work through all those stakeholders with. And we're confident with the 4 vendors that we've had as incumbents going forward with them, that they've been productive partners, they've been strong partners to navigate those complex environments. And then any new partners that would be coming in, we'd look to be sort of, as I said, sort of giving them that tryout phase, making sure that we would be able to trust them engaging with principals, right? Having their teams go out, being able to engage with the principal on site. That can be complicated, right? And so you need to make sure that you have a team that's well managed, that can go out there, that can escalate issues as they come up. And we found that with the 4 vendors we have, which is why we're looking to continue with the incumbents in particular, as well as introduce these new vendors.
Do you work with the state education department, DOE in Albany around this?
The folks on the City Hall side and some other folks within the T2 test and trace environment do. I'm sort of a lowly operations person, so they say go to the school and we bring the school, right? So we work on that stuff. But absolutely, everything needs to be coordinated with the state, make sure that we're operating within the right parameters. Before the last school year opened, there was requirements around if you're going to open the schools, what the testing regime would look like. 10%, 20%, would it be mandatory, optional? Would it be weekly or monthly? All those types of considerations are going to be on the same table going forward into this school year and what that looks like, especially without the remote option being there. That's a lot of the discussions that are going to need to be had in the weeks ahead.
Thank you.
Chris, would the 4 vendors that have the experience in the schools, would they have sufficient capacity to do the testing for schools if none of the others seem up to? I mean, I don't know how. I guess you're saying that we're going to see the others in the community testing situation to see if we're comfortable moving them into schools, but they won't have the experience necessary regardless. It's more just us evaluating whether we think they might get there. Is that right?
That's right. Those sort of tryout periods are very much just in terms of how do we work with them? How do we communicate with them? Do we trust them to put them into an even more complex environment? But as I said, they all do have at least some level of experience testing in schools. Testing in schools anywhere is going to require the labs to be reporting to whether it's the state or the school district. There's going to be some level of reporting for contact tracing purposes for all those vendors anywhere else they've done testing. So it's analogous experience, but it's not necessarily local experience, and that's going to be the difference.
So you expect to have more. The 4 wouldn't be the
The 4, it comes down to those policy discussion or decisions, 10% or 20% of students, what frequency. I think with the 4 we have, we probably could have enough capacity to do that, but it's a lot of unknowns of how of 1 million school students with hundreds of thousands of staff, what that testing regimen looks like. That's a big open question. I think we have very strong capacity. I don't know if it would be adequate if there was sort of a testing regime that was on the more intensive side,
Right.
in which case then we would look to be tapping a 5th or 6th or 7th vendor.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, Benny, I jumped you. Go
No,
ahead,
no,
please.
I'm actually. I have. Are you okay?
Go ahead.
Yeah. I have a couple of questions. If you look at the list of the vendors that had been involved with the original contract, did we selected all of the vendors that were in the original contract, or were any one of them not selected to continue in this contract?
Each of the 6 that we have been working with currently have been proposed to move forward with new contracts going forward.
Okay.
All of them have performed adequately.
That goes to my second question. We do have a lot of information about them because they did this work for over a year. Is it possible to provide information about their performance and the criteria that was used for evaluating their performance? Because different, from what I remember, different subcontractor have different numbers of sites as well as testing procedures and numbers. And we would like to know, particularly, I think one issue was the turnaround time. And I think following up on Sally's question, any state or city regulations, how did they perform? Were there a lot of kind of exceptions that were flagged or something? I think, as comprehensive as possible in the performance, I think will be valuable to assess. Then the second or a set of second question is about the NWBE, particularly when we look at some of the vendors that have already been in the program. I think it would be important to also document their performance. I know you mentioned at a very high level that 2 of them exceeded, 2 of them kind of, again, a keyword, best effort, which sometimes to me is a red herring, and others were below. So we have only 33% really perform, because I think the best effort give me the impression that they did not perform, but we say like, gosh, they really tried, but no cigar. So, but I think we would like to know how far were they from their goal. I think we need to do that.
Absolutely.
And I don't want to venture anything because the data, I don't have it, but it is very concerning to me that 2 of the vendors that have been in the program, and that, if I recall correctly, did a significant volume of work, even for this proposal, and I don't think they perform as well in the MWB. That's why I want to know their performance. I don't know if they are in they try, didn't get it, others did not perform. And then for this contract, they didn't even, I don't know if I want to use the word bother, to list name of NWB, because they have been in the program. You have BRL and Fulgent. So they didn't even mention it. And so one can say, well, when they put the proposal, they may have not gotten the message. We may not have sent the message correctly. And I think it also falls on us because it really made me think how well we were communicating our values and our requirements that they did not present during the proposal, their names. And even more troubling to me is that we come to this meeting and in the publications that you provide us, there were no names. So we're talking about the proposal submission, no names, again, an issue that I have with that. Then we come to this meeting, no names, and you just came out with names coming out of, and again, I'm using language a little bit colorful to kind of make the point. Out of the hat, you bring a rabbit, and you say, now we have 3, and we're going to evaluate it. This doesn't give me a lot of assurance that either the vendors or you and your team are taking this issue as seriously as I think it should be. So can you explain to me what has happened that the vendors, at least these 2 vendors, because I understand that Daybreak was not part, so they can give an excuse that they were not part of that, the message was not taken. But BRL and Fulgent, I think they should have gotten the message. And if they didn't, I think you and your team should have been able to really drive it home.
Sure.
And your presentation today really made me question how much you did really drove it home. So can you tell me, like, each step, what happened at the proposal submission, what happened today, and where these names came out of the hat just suddenly now, that how sure we will have to have any confidence that the performance will be better than they did last year?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And maybe we can start with BRL because that one's a little less complicated, I think. And then we can go to Fulgent, which I think is the second one that you're referencing, right?
The one that is a lot more troubling.
Right. So on BRL here, that was on the proposal side, that was just, they failed to submit it on there. But under the prior contract, under the existing contract, I should say, under the existing contract, they've had a 39% spend to date, 16 million out of 41 million that they've been spending on MWBE services. That was presented during last month's meeting here. This sort of blank line here on the subcontractor, that was, I would suggest, sort of just that gap during the proposal that they failed to submit it. We followed up, we got the information, it's in there. They've been performing in this regard by hitting 39% to date. So for BRL,
Let me ask you a
that's what I
question.
would propose. Yes.
Are these names the same names that they're using now in the current proposal, or these are new names?
These, I think all of them are the same names that they've been using previously that they pulled forward. They just failed to put it into the actual proposal. Fulgent, though, is harder, right? Fulgent was certainly in that last of the 3 categories, right? The ones that didn't put in the effort through the first handful of months, right? And we have been driving that very, very directly home to them, to the point of making sure that they understood that if they didn't have a very concrete plan together that I would be able to speak to today, I wouldn't be surprised if we weren't able to continue work with them. We've made contingency plans if we weren't able to continue work with them. And I've told them that we've made contingency plans. They understand the severity of this. I can assure you of that for whatever that is worth. They understand that the work may not continue if this question remains. They have contracted with this vendor, Cure Staffing, where if you look back at where their spending had been previous, with their previous staffing firm. So if you were to say, if they hadn't used the staffing firm that was not MWBE and instead used this one that they now have a contract with, what would their MWBE spend have been under this current contract? It would have been 34%. About 34% of their overall spend is on staffing. 100% of their staffing spend on a go-forward basis will be through Cure Staffing and MWBE. So 100% of the staffing funds will go to Cure. And then in addition, they've partnered with a number of supply companies that I mentioned earlier, SendMed Enterprises, Globe Scientific, the Olympic Glove and Safety Company. Were they incredibly slow? Absolutely. Did they operate in good faith? I'm not necessarily here to tell you that. I am here to say that they've been an incredible performer, that we've moved a publicly traded company into the MWBE space. When they came to us in October, November, December, none of these contracts existed. They do now. We've got commitments to get to 30% from them with those new contracts. If we need to live without them, we can live without them. They've been a solid performer. If you look at their scoring on this proposal, they got a 0 on MWBE. It was all the other categories' performance that lifted them up to be an adequate performer to score even still within the sort of top half of the list. But they did get a fat 0 on MWBE. So that's sort of where it is with Fulgent. I'd be happy to hear, respond to any additional questions you may have.
So I think the data that you never said how much they actually did perform under the prior contract. You did say that VRL did 39%, but
Fulgent to date, 2%,
2%.
because it has just started in recent weeks with that new contract with Cure.
And you
I
have
expect
seen,
that July will show better. That's really just June numbers. By the time the invoice comes in August, I expect the July numbers will be, for July, closer, if not above 30% for July spend. And then on an ongoing basis, it will be month over month. If you look at the historic spend, they've got a lot of catch up to do under the last contract. On a go forward basis, should we move forward with them, there'll be a 30% plus by the use of Cure staffing on a go forward basis, because they'll have that spend on day one if we move forward with them.
and you have articulated, and we have seen that they have been a very reluctant partner in this issue of NWB. And I have been alluding or saying that I also have felt that you may not have been as a strong advocate as I think you should have been with this, because again, for the historical part of this conversation. So I want a two-part answers to you,
Sure.
and I want to on the record is that you believe that even with the reluctance in this matter of NWB, that they have gotten the message and
Yes.
that they will
Yes.
perform.
Yes, on both counts. I am confident they've gotten the message, both that they must perform or they would get 0 work if we're even able to contract with them on a go forward basis. I have made it abundantly clear that we will pull the work and that we have backup plans should we need to.
The second part comes to you. Like I said, I also feel that you have not been as a strong advocate as I think you should have been. Do you feel that you and your group have also gotten the message of how important this is, and it will be on top of this, that if the performance is not up to par, you will do what is necessary?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
And the last one, and then I have to ask for Coalicia and to the chair. I particularly, like to, believe and see. So will it be possible to request that we do get a monthly report on the performance in all the different criteria? Because you are making an excellent point that Fulgent, even though they're having a reluctant partner on the NWB, they have superseded, I'm putting words on your mouth, our expectation on the performance in all the other categories. That's what I think I heard. Is that what you said?
I think that's accurate.
So in that case, we have to be fair to all the vendors. So we wanted to really see the performance of all the vendors in all those criterias, as well as the NWB, and have a monthly report on that performance. And if any of the vendors are falling behind the track, like by 5%, that you present in the monthly report a action plan to get those vendors track, or to take the action necessary to bypass them and reallocate work.
Yeah, absolutely. Would be happy to. And it'll be a short conversation for Fulgent, because if they fail in the first month, they're gone.
Okay. Coalicia, is that possible to make that request, or that's too much to ask? I don't know. I just asked.
I'm going to let Barbara speak, but I think that is appropriate. I think we want to have a monthly reporting on all the vendors and to be able to, terminate or move on. Barbara?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to address who are the partners locally in each one of these sites. Please do not leave out the parents, because they would make sure the plug gets pulled. And the schools have different kind of parents. They have the favorites, they're nice, don't make noise. And then you find out that 90% of the parents never get a letter to come to school for a meeting, okay? that can't happen here.
Mhm.
So prior to schools opening and implementation, how will these vendors, in partnership with the educators, the principals, who probably don't want this work anyway, you know, it's not what they want to do. Some will. How will we get to know that there's consensus and a real green light on this?
Yeah, so that's going to be, and I see Dr. Long has joined as well. If he has anything to add here, otherwise, please do. That's going to be some of the work that we do here, partnering with the Department of Education very, very closely, right? They're the ones that really own the relationships, so to speak, in terms of engagement with the parents, engagement with those stakeholders. And so what we work with them on is here's the types of things that we would need for the testing team to come in. We need a space that meets this, that, and the other requirement. We need this much time to be able to test that many people, and we need that consent. And so we work with them so they communicate with the stakeholders, collect those consents, get them through all that type of process. So we'll be working very closely with DOE on all those types of things.
And the school-based clinics, how many do we have in New York City, do you remember?
I can.
We have
no.
well over 30.
Yeah, what, Ted, it was, I know the number is.
Yeah, I can jump in.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Hi,
Yes.
Yes.
hi.
Forgive me
Yes.
for not being there in person today. I am a little under the weather, and on principle, I will COVID test myself, and then I didn't want to potentially expose others to whatever it is my son has given me. So, Barbara, your question is really right on. And what I've done myself is I've actually gone to a lot of events speaking with parents about their concerns about the school testing program, and to see what I could do working with DOE to help to address and really rectify some of the issues that they were bringing up. For example, one of the things that I've actually heard most loud and clear is a lot of parents are worried about how the swab works for their kids. And it may sound like a minor detail, but it's super important to parents. And as father myself, who is now probably infected by my son by something, the idea of somebody putting a device in his nose actually is kind of it's something I would want to, I would need to feel comfortable with that. So, the way that we've been able to work with parents is I've myself explained to them how the anterior nares swab works. And that's gone a tremendously long way to, I think, having parents know that we care enough to take the time to explain that. And again, I've done countless of these myself personally. By the end of these meetings with parents, they're actually very comfortable with our school testing program and understand that we're doing it to keep their kids safe and understand that we're taking every consideration to make sure their kids feel comfortable and it's not a traumatic event for them the whole way through because the parents aren't there with them. So all of that's to say that the idea of engaging parents is crucial. We've done that, throughout with DOE, and I think that's actually been one of the key ways to agree with you, Barbara, that we've been successful in being able to accomplish more than 1 million tests since starting to do this in our schools, which we're going to continue to do.
And the partnership between those who are in the schools already with the clinics and doing that work. The expectation of educators is going to be they're going to show up maybe and also expect to be tested and traced and vaccinated teachers.
Yeah, and
Right.
Go ahead, Ted. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think, Barbara, you were getting at the question of the role of the school-based clinics with respect to with testing people. So the way that we've orchestrated this is we have independent staff that come in. So if you have a school-based health clinic or you don't, no problem either way, because we're bringing in the staff to do all the testing of teachers and students ourselves. And that's, I think, that reliability has I think, gone a long way to build confidence with our operation as well. The schools know teachers and students when we're coming in, they expect us. They know how we work. And we give the same experience to every school that we go to, which again, we've done it 1 million times over. So it really is a fair amount of experience we have under our belts now. The school-based health clinics, to be clear, exist in several hundred schools. We have 22 that we run through health and hospitals. But given that we have 1,600 schools in New York City, they certainly are not in every school. So it's part of the reason why our processes here, we want to be consistent at every school. Whether or not you have a school-based health clinic, you're going to have the same experience getting tested, whether you're a student or a teacher with us.
Barbara, do you want to add any reporting monthly about how the what's
Well,
going
I
on in
think
this?
between the work that's been done previously, it'll be a good example of what we should be, because this could get even political.
Mhm.
I mean, you know, it doesn't stop when it comes to kids and health in the schools. It's taken forever to get all the pieces in place.
Mhm.
I mean, 2 regions I had to help me to get the youth risk behavior survey done at schools. The CDC risk behavior survey, they just refused. This years ago, of course, but it doesn't change this whole thing. Health is for you, and I'll just teach kids, and
Right.
you know, we don't want to be involved. So building the rapport and the collaboration and clarity on responsibilities is important, because they will bring a kid with a nosebleed to the testing site in a minute. You're a nurse, take care of the kid, you know? And so those things, where you have not been before, and possibly where you've been before, because principals are coming back with big ideas about what they want.
Yeah, and Barbara, if it would be helpful, I'd love to volunteer for us to. I personally believe that people vote with their feet, and if they understand, believe in, and see it, and trust something, then they'll pursue it. We'd be happy to share with you the numbers of how many people are voting with their feet as part of our school testing program moving forward. You know, to show that what we're doing is something that parents and students are comfortable with, have consented for, and are following through with. We'd be very happy to share those numbers ongoing with you if that would be helpful.
And just remember, there's a state education department in New York State, right in downtown Brooklyn. And
Thank
they certainly need to be a partner.
Yes.
Thank you, Barbara. Sally has another question.
Just, I share, I guess, Benny's great over Fulton.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Start over, Sally.
I share Benny's outrage over Fulton. At the last meeting, I suggested that we move forward with Fulton for a month, but that if they apply for the new SB, we not move forward with them unless they're planned. I guess what I was saying at that time was they shouldn't even be allowed to see it, or their proposal could be discarded once they submitted something that didn't have any public. That was that. When our last meeting was, that we went over
June,
this
I think.
concern, but it was at least. And I just echo Ben's concern, and I think his recourse to having monthly reporting is the only way to really cement their commitment. How much money are they making? Projected or former contract?
The existing contract.
Under the one that's sort of wrapping up now, we paid them about $31 million. It's not a small amount of money, absolutely.
And
They want to do what we want.
yes, I mean,
I just want to answer the weird point, but Sally, and I was trying to look in my phone for the minutes for last one to be more particular in the fact, and I was dancing more around because I didn't have the facts. But now that I have the facts from Sally, this is a proof of why I consider that you and your team has not taken this as seriously as it should, because this was communicated to you, and I remember that you and Ted over there mentioned that these new contracts will address those issues. And we see again that these vendors are able to submit, then you evaluated them, then you come here, and they didn't have a plan. And just at the last minute, a plan was magically presented without any thoughtful evaluation. So I really would like to emphasize that I'm holding you and your team responsible for anything that is happening in this conference, because I think you two have taken care of that.
Absolutely, and I'm happy to stand by our work on a go-forward basis as I am going backwards. They submitted the RFP prior to that last meeting. They had set a 30% target, but they didn't submit a name because of their failure to perform in this regard under the existing prior contract. In the meantime, including with the additional oomph that I received coming out of the last meeting with you all. We've delivered that message loud and clear. They have made sure to come back in with those vendors, Cure Staffing and the others, but they didn't have them at the time of the RFP submission, right? They have since contracted with them. When we look back at their historic spend on staffing, I do expect that they will clear that threshold if we're able to move forward with them. And if they don't, we will cut work off the very first time that we see that it's not moving the direction it needs to be and not clearing the threshold that you and me and my team expect they should be clearing.
I think you mentioned, Chris, that their staffing costs are 34% of roughly of their
Over time,
costs.
about 34%.
And so we should be able to see that in the first monthly report. They should not be creeping up
That's
to
right.
34%. It should be
That's right. They
above
flipped overnight
30.
in effect from one vendor to the other. One of the sort of luckier elements of that transition is that that we're having these conversations and we have been sure to drive that point exceptionally clearly home to them during summer school testing, which is lower volume than the school year itself. And so they've been able to make that overnight transition in effect. We'll see it sort of half a month on, half a month off in June, right? Because they made that transition during June. And then we'll see that transition fully ramped up for the July numbers. Again, it'll be a relatively small dollar figure that was the spend, but it should clear that 30% threshold because they did make that switch on the staffing side.
And I think you mentioned that they're going to have other suppliers and and so ideally we'd like to see that exceed the 34, because staffing is one component. If they have other suppliers as well, since they underperformed in the prior contract, it's reasonable that they're going to overperform here, and I think that's expected. Like to see that.
It's expected that they should overperform against the benchmarks. I just want to make sure I'm coming back hitting
Yeah,
the correct criteria that you're establishing. They've put forward a 30% benchmark. Do we need to be moving them above that?
Well, I think my personal view is that I think this is a good faith effort discussion, and it's an understanding of the importance of this. So it's not that we have a requirement that we're going to move them above their commitment level, but I'm speaking from committee members. I think that we need to see some.
They need to meet and exceed.
Right.
More than meet and exceed. Yes.
So I think we will call for a vote here, but I would say that the vote is with the added requirements of continued reporting and remedial action in the case of not meeting expectations. And also, I think we wanted to see, did you ask for some information on historical?
Yeah, I
performance?
said like my vote would be conditional to that you provide in the report that you're bringing to the board, because again, we do have another chance to vote on the board, that it has all the performance information of the vendors that we have worked with in all the dimensions. I want to be very fair to everybody. We want to see where people exceed, where they fall short. So not only NWB, but of course they've been NWB in terms of expenditure and percentage, as well as, and I don't know if this can be put into the resolution, the monthly, and I really want it on the record, the monthly. It's almost like you hear in a lot of school systems, you were talking about schools, like consent decree, that they are told, yes, because you haven't behaved or you haven't done what you're supposed to, we are going to be watching you and you have to report. So I really would like in the resolution to be a monthly reporting the performance of this vendor, because I to tell you the truth, I'm not confident in there and in your team. I'm sorry to say that because I don't think you got the message when we said it last time. So I think we just have to watch you closer than what we should be watching. So
Understood.
Okay. Excuse me, Ms. Chairwoman. At this point, you can call an executive closed session if you need to before the vote, and we can go into executive session and come back into public session after the discussion. We need to have some. It's the committee's decision.
I think we have a path forward. Andy, do you think we?
We can definitely, based on the discussion, what I'm hearing is that.
Okay. why don't I call for an executive session so we can talk? So do I make a motion for executive session?
The board for executive, convene an
Okay.
executive session.
I'm
Yes.
going to ask for a vote to convene an executive session.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Matt?
On this one,
Aye.
please.
Everybody in favor? Aye.
Members,
Okay,
can you
thank
come
you.
up and come in, please? Just one moment.
So, Calicia, I will jump off and let me know when to join back or whatever is best.
Ted, you can stay.
We'll stay here, yeah.
stay-
The magic man. When did you walk back in?
Me?
See you.
I snuck out. I snuck in our
I
press.
didn't see you because we were
You
so
saw me.
deeply involved there. Yeah, the school-based plans just to get them started.
I know. You know, when I was at the state, they made me go all the way to Albany. You know, and it's great. Yeah. Me?
Alrighty.
Let me just put this back in open session.
We're live,
Hold on.
alive and well.
Okay, are we ready to resume? Matt, we're gonna resume, okay? Go ahead, Frida.
Okay, so we're reconvening an open session, and I propose that we are going to, I propose a motion to move this resolution forward for consideration at the board, at the full board, with the consideration of the additional requirements regarding reporting on metrics monthly that we have already discussed here today. So that, I'm going to take a vote, actually.
Second.
Yes, thank you, second, and then I'll take a vote. Matt?
Aye.
Barbara?
Yes.
Denny?
Yes.
Sally? And I vote yes. So the motion to move this forward is approved. The next agenda item that we have is a financial update in the interest of time, John, could I ask that you just report on any things that are, time sensitive or you feel is important for everybody to know here, and then we'll table the full discussion for the next meeting.
Yeah, no, nothing of any urgency. Yes. Nothing of any urgency. It was our year-end report. I think it's we did I think very well at the end of the year. Basically hit our targets. I think we're $10 million short. But yeah, I think we're content and pleased with how we finished the year.
Terrific. And I just comment that, we flipped through it, and I know you didn't discuss it, but it was a very good report. I think a lot of the information provided regarding denials management and getting people insured is quite impressive. So I look forward to having a broader discussion on that at the next meeting. Sally, I think, did have a
Very quick
question.
On coverage for the eligible uninsured, about a year and a half or 2 years ago, we did a very concentrated effort to ensure the uninsured at Helping Hospitals, it was Metro Plus and Helping Hospitals together, with not good outcomes. And so I'm very curious to know what accounted for such great success now.
Well, I think, and Margie, please, but I think it's a combination of things, right? Putting the full force of, Helping Hospitals and Metro Plus working together to re-enroll, individuals. We have, better data and analytics, right, to know, who's showing up for, visits and not being financially counseled. We're changing our workflows such that we start the financial counseling process at the point where the patient is actually making the appointment and there's a handoff. So it's a whole series of things that we're doing, together that we think is producing, the positive results. I also say the health department stepped forward 18 months ago and kind of let us do our own, work with the exchange to, secure insurance. So again, it's been a bunch of things, but we still have more to go, right? And I think Margie's data is excellent. Inpatient, we're fine. ED, we're almost there. On the outpatient side, that's where we're concentrating our effort, and we're actually even hiring more financial counselors in those areas. So I think it's good work, but I don't think we're quite there yet.
I just have a quick question. I know that there has been a lot in the press in terms of the FEMA and how our delegation led by Leader Schumer in terms of the FEMA reimbursement for our system. I see here that you have a work in progress. Is there any update that you can provide on how that is going?
Yeah, I think we probably have one more work in progress sign, and that's the FEMA one. I think the state stuff, we're making great progress there, right, and the things that we've been working on. But the FEMA one, we took some actions. We sent a letter, Dr. Katz sent a letter to the FEMA administrator. That kind of kicked off a lot of interest on the part of the delegation, both statewide delegates, particularly Senator Schumer, but also some of the regional representatives have done an excellent job advocating for us, and it's great. We were just on a call with them last week, where they continue to express interest, and we were told that Senator Schumer has actually called the FEMA administrator. So we're hopeful, right? We think we put together some very compelling arguments that we think would allow FEMA to move forward, on the path that we're on. And then in addition to the $355 million that we're requesting immediate assistance on, we have in the queue another couple $100 million in PPE expenses. So we're hopeful that we certainly have the attention, we believe, of the administrator. And this is difficult work for FEMA, right? They've never kind of been here before wrestling with such a long-term pandemic, but we're asking them kindly to move forward quickly with us.
Thank you.
Barb. No, go ahead, Sally.
You reduced your total receipts by about $600 million, most of it on inpatient. On the inpatient side, is that based on experience to date?
Which chart is this
Am I
one?
reading it wrong? Revenue performance.
Yeah, so the purple on the bar chart.
Oh, it's budget. I see. Never mind, it's budget, not actuals.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mistake.
Yeah, we're doing, I think the nice thing that what we see in patient care is that our progress is sustaining. We were $500 million up over that previous year to year, this year, 450. I mean, the sign that I take from that is a lot of things are continuing. We're embedding kind of our processes, right, our flows into RevCycle, thanks to Margie and all her hard work. And then Matt's team is doing a great job, securing higher permanent rates. So I think all those things seem to be sustaining themselves, which we hope to like.
Barbara, did you have a question?
No, I just think that the kind of attention on this issue with FEMA has been very forceful, and hopefully they will respond appropriately.
Yes, that's our hope.
Thank you. Matt, any comments or?
No.
Okay, great job. All right, then, is there any old business, new business? No further business, then the meeting's adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Sorry we didn't get to hear your presentation, but appreciate the work.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good to see you too, Nad. Yeah, my regents was McGivern at NY.